This week, we welcome Danny Jenkins, CEO and co-founder at ThreatLocker, to discuss why deny by default is the better approach to security. In the leadership and communications section, bridging the gap between the CISO and the board of directors. CISO Mind Map 2025, what do InfoSec professionals really do? How to prevent strategy fatigue, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Imagine a world where every threat, ransomware, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits, is stopped before it can even begin. ThreatLocker makes that world a reality with a zero-trust approach to cybersecurity. By giving you granular control on every executable that can happen in your environment, ThreatLocker protects your business around the clock. No more guessing, no more gaps. Just rock-solid protection that keeps your operations running smoothly and your data secure. Discover how ThreatLocker's least privilege approach can safeguard your organization against known and unknown threats. Take the first step towards total peace of mind. Visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker today. Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 391, recorded April 14th, 2025. I am your host, Matt Alderman. Joining me for this interview segment are my co-hosts. First, Mr. Jason Albuquerque.
Hey, Jason. Hey there, Matt. Not a lot of NFL news over this past week, but I hope you got to see the Masters. Wow,
that was a great ending.
Rory McIlroy. Oh my! Let me tell you, that was a roller coaster of a Masters tournament, no doubt about it.
He's up 4 strokes coming into the back 9. Drops 3 strokes in 2 holes, basically, to go into a tiebreaker.
Exactly. I mean, DeChambeau. Wow, did he go? Poof, he lost
completely collapsed.
Totally.
Yeah.
But great tournament.
Yes, it was. Also joining me, Mr. Ben Carr. Any sports updates, Ben?
No, man, you guys are like so into the sports stuff, and I've got so much to do, man. I was putting up fencing this weekend. I got hit in the face with a drill. It was just, it's...
we like that sports ball stuff, huh, Matt?
Yeah. Ben, it's
you guys should take me over and under whether I'm going to hurt myself on a weekend working with a tractor, a skid steer, or putting something in the ground.
Just so you know, I do spend a lot of time in the yard doing that. But anyways, I didn't watch any of the Masters until literally like the 8th hole on Sunday. So I'm not glued to it, Ben. So.
Okay. All right.
Okay. All right, one quick announcement, and then let's get into the interview. Identiverse 2025 is returning to Las Vegas June 3rd to 6th. Hear from over 250 expert speakers and connect with over 3,000 identity security professionals across 4 days of keynotes, breakout sessions, and deep dives into the latest identity security trends, plus take part in hands-on workshops and explore the brand new non-human identity pavilion. Register now and save 25% with code IDV25-SecurityWeekly by visiting securityweekly.com/IDV2025. This segment is sponsored by ThreatLocker. To learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker. Danny Jenkins, CEO and co-founder of ThreatLocker, a cybersecurity firm providing zero-trust endpoint security, is a leading cybersecurity expert with over 2 decades of experience building and securing corporate networks, including roles on both the red and blue teams. He is dedicated to educating industry professionals about the latest cyber threats and frequently speaks on the topics of ransomware and zero trust. Danny, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Matt, thank you for having me back.
Yes. Well, you've been on a lot of our other shows, and I just interviewed you on Founder Story. So anybody who wants to kind of hear the story, they should go listen to that interview because I thought you did a really interesting job kind of describing the start of ThreatLocker. You and I go back to RSA Conference 2020 when Paul and I were walking the floor back then, and we found this little 10 by 10 booth in the back called ThreatLocker, and Paul and I said, "Hey, what do you guys do?" And the rest is a little bit history, but what I think is interesting about ThreatLocker and what we're going to talk about today is this concept of default to deny, right? Deny by default, which is something we maybe didn't really, we knew the benefits of it, but like if I go back into my career just quickly, I remember the days of intrusion prevention systems, right? We had IDSs and then we said, hey, let's just block. And I remember all the downstream issues with blocking in the IPS world. And so a lot of people shied away from this concept of block by default, only allow things to do. But you saw a different path for the endpoint where that could be beneficial. Why was that?
So I think, I go right back to the 90s, early 2000s, and we start looking at malware. And this is the first time I ever looked at a concept of application whitelisting. And it's more than just whitelisting at the application level, but what applications can do, network controls, storage controls, and things like that. But when I go back to the early 2000s, and I think my job as an IT security professional was cleaning up because someone got a virus on their computer. And the solution back then was the same as the solution now. Well, the options for solutions were antivirus or detection, call it, or blocking everything. And we knew back then blocking everything was the solution, but it was too hard and nobody wanted the effort. So then roll forward to 2017 when we started ThreatLocker, it was now block everything or EDR, but essentially detection. The difference being between 1997 or 2001 and 2020 or 17, or even 2025 now, was the consequence of when you didn't block something. Before, it was the most notorious virus was the love bug, which said "I love you" and emailed all your friends saying "I loved you." It was embarrassing. It was shameful that you just emailed the CEO of your customer, but your business didn't end from it. You sent an email saying, "I'm sorry, I got a computer virus." Today, you're talking about ransomware, data theft, your whole business being shut down. And what we decided in 2017 was, rather than trying to find a better detection system, was let's solve the problems with blocking by default. Let's figure out why it's so difficult and let's expand it so it's even more secure. And if we can do that, that solves everyone's problems and we're not guessing anymore, because the bad guys have to be right 1% of the time and they're going to make money. So if they go after 100 companies, they need one company to fail. We have to be right every time, because if we only have to be wrong once and we're done.
So Danny, that's I love the concept, right? But the things that security professionals and security executives struggle with all the time is keeping the business running, right? And the last thing we want is the CEO or the CFO to come to us and say, "Hey, my application that I use on the daily is blacklisted." So like the say easy, do hard of all this, right? We talk about this on the show all the time. There's so many things that are easy to say, but when you have to put the elbow grease at the end of the day, it's really, really hard to get done. You need to know your software inventory. You need to know your software assets. You need to know what's going to be running on the endpoint. So talk to me a little bit about the strategy of onboarding and implementation to make sure that it's not disruptive to the business, because that's the key. As a CISO in an organization, the last thing you want is your board, your CFO, and your CEO to say, "You're an impediment to my business. Stop everything you're doing."
And before you jump in, Danny, you jump in, I'll add on to that, because like you kind of beat me to it, Jason. But that's just to overcomplicate it more. I think the operational mode of the CISO has changed in like 5 to 10 years, right? Where it used to be, we could block stuff and stop stuff, and we've kind of evolved to this. Let's not be the guy who says no. Let's try to figure out how to allow it, right? Like educational institutions were always like anybody could do anything they want. Corporates were a little more locked down, but now it's really manifested into this. We have to enable people to kind of almost self-service and turn on stuff themselves. And so that just makes it even more complicated, right? So I'm just wondering how you answer that. Jason's question, and then the overcomplication of kind of end users kind of bringing whatever they want to the table. And it's not like we can say, this is the approved corporate app. In a lot of cases, it's, okay, we'll have to figure out how to make that work too.
Bring your own technology.
Yeah.
So I think, and we have to, it's interesting, because when we started as a company, we came up with this concept, and I remember speaking to an investor, and they're like, this isn't a viable product. And the way they presented it to me was if every person in the world, every corporation in the world was to buy ThreatLocker, and ThreatLocker was to have and sell at recommended retail to all of them who is looking for, we'll say, an application control product right now, who uses an application control product, then your entire market is $500 million at best. And most companies never get past 1% of them. So the entire. So, and what I looked at is I was like, no, I'm not trying to sell to the people who want this product, because they're already willing to go through the pain not to have it. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to figure out how do we service the rest of the world. And to your point, I'm using an application every day, and why did my application get blocked? And how do you even know what you're using? And that was the first challenge we had to deal with. What are you using in your organization? And today we've got clients, we've got the world's biggest airports, which cannot go down. We've got airlines, we've got hospitals, and all of these companies use the same products every day. And they were currently or previously relying on EDR and detection and response. And you can't be in a situation where we suddenly block by default and block everything. So what we do is we go out and we learn what's in your environment. And this is where it gets better, because now we're going to learn all the software you have, and we'll deal with the application updates in a minute. And we're going to tell you, these are the apps you're running in your environment. Now, we don't just say, here's a list of DLLs, because that is pointless and useless to anyone. What we do is we actually match them with known apps. So we've got catalog information on about 40,000 different applications. So we'll say, these belong to this app, this is Office, this is Chrome, and this is an app we found in your environment that we have no idea what it is, but we've cataloged it anyway. Because we're going to know, if you're a complex company, you're going to have something we've not seen before. So the first thing you do is you deploy, you learn. And you learn for a couple of weeks. And if you're really paranoid, you learn for 3 months. And every week, you're doing nothing but waiting. We do a simulation. So we say, let's simulate if something would have been blocked in your environment. Now, most companies, big enterprises say, I want to simulate for at least 12 weeks. Small companies will say, let's just do a week or two and we'll lock down, because they're not as worried about risk. So we'll do the simulation and we'll say, this is what would have been blocked in the last week. Now, maybe in there, you've got a payroll. It's always payroll. You've got a payroll app. And that payroll, that payroll app is self-updating every single day with some new tax codes. And for some reason, they couldn't figure out how to use a database, so they use a DLL. And that DLL is going to get blocked. We say, okay, look, this process, payrollupdated.exe, is downloaded in a new DLL and it's been opened by payrollservice.exe. So we'll say, let's create an exception for that. And then we go through 12 weeks of simulation. It sounds like 12 weeks of work. It's not 12 weeks of work. It's we do a call with you once a week and we do a simulation and we lock down. Now, what typically happens is the company says after about week 3, can we lock these machines down, because I can't keep watching this. I'm getting too scared there. Because what we'll show is, hey, the TeamViewer would have been blocked on this machine because someone downloaded TeamViewer. And people go, oh, we don't want to allow that. and we'll see these things, and they're in this learning period. And then at the end, we decide to remove what we don't want. And we'll show them everything. We'll show them what country it was developed in. We'll show them if it's unpatched software. We'll show them everything about the app. And then after that period, they lock down. So now, to your question about, I've been using this app and suddenly it gets blocked. When you deny by default, you're actually in a stronger position, because I haven't heard of any software in the last year that would break your systems and a major update. But when you're using an EDR or response-based technologies, you rely 100% on updates to your system. And what happens in those updates is one of two things can happen. One is the update can be bad and blue screen your machines. The second problem is the update can contain a pattern of a file that happens to match your good app, and suddenly your good app gets blocked, because antivirus and EDR can block good things as well. It just happens to match an encryption algorithm that's used in ransomware this week. So when you're blocking by default, you're not relying on that. So your downtime actually becomes less, because now what you're saying is what's working continues to work. What's new gets approved.
So, I mean, so I think the answer is part of the question that Jason had, which is the administration of this, right? Which can be difficult, right? So you go in, you learn, you inventory, you simulate, and you use that to create your allow list, and everything else gets blocked by default, which I think is awesome, right? But then What about a new application that a client or that a user needs to install? Do you run it back through that inventory simulation process? Is there a workflow for an end user who needs this new piece of software, this new application, to go through that process? Yeah. How does that happen?
And that's to Ben's point. How do we allow users to self-serve without causing pain in our organization? So I download, and I did this as a demo actually at Zero Trust World a few weeks ago. I download, a few months ago now, a PDF writer. I want to write to a PDF because I've decided I need to change PDFs, and I'm a user and I know best. So I download this. Now, if it's good software, it's probably going to need admin rights to install, but a lot of apps don't. So I'm going to have admin problems there anyway. So I download this. Well, I can't even remember the app I downloaded, some PDF software. And ThreatLocker says, this is not in your approved list of applications. And we're going to show the user everything about it. So we're going to say this software is a PDF software. It was made in China. And this is the data it will have access to in your environment if it's allowed to run. Now, the user at this point has a few different options depending on how you configured it. One is they can say, I want to request it anyway. So I want my IT guy to tell me if I'm allowed to run this. So they can hit request, and the IT guy can run it in a sandbox environment. They can approve it. They can use predefined definitions, and they can say, I'm going to approve this, but it can't see anything on our network. Or I'm going to approve this, but it can't go out to the internet because I'm concerned that it might be exfilling data. Or the user, if the IT person has turned it on, can say, show me alternatives. And then when they click show me alternatives, it brings up a page and says, you're not allowed to run this software, but you are allowed to run Qt PDF and you are allowed to run Adobe. And here's the link to download it. And when you click that link, we know it needs to run as an admin. So we're going to allow this program to run as an admin during your setup period and nothing else. And you can then write your PDFs. So we're allowing the user to self-serve. Now, is there circumstances where there is an alternative? Absolutely. But it's pretty rare. And it's pretty rare for a user to download an app in your organization that isn't used somewhere else in your organization anyway. It's not. So when you're approving software, you can decide, is this a global policy that we allow it for the entire org, or is this a one-off policy for this user anyway?
How do you handle things where bring your own vulnerable driver, right? Where they're using an app that's valid and good, but it happens to have a vulnerability inside of it, right? Using that vulnerability, and they're using it to actually as a compromise point. Like, are you getting in the way of that at all, or is that's still a hole? That's a problem.
No. So there's two parts to this, and so ThreatLocker is an endpoint protection platform. So and by the way, we also have an EDR component, and we have the detection parts to look for known vulnerabilities and things like that, and we'll tell you if it's out of date software. But we also have I always say, if I had a choice of locking my front door or putting an alarm on my house, which one would I do? I'm going to lock my front door. Like, sure. That's because if someone's already in the house, I have to go running out and chase them out. If the door's locked, they go out. So the first part of ThreatLocker is
the locked door is only keeping out the honest people, right? Like the criminal.
If it's a good front door, if it's a good steel door, we'll say. But I still have an alarm on my house. I've said it sometimes. But if I'm thinking about what's priority, if I've got a choice of should I block software by default and control what it can do, or should I alert if something is known bad, I'm always choosing block by default. The second thing we do is once an application is running, we say, well, how can this be used against us? And what does this application need to access? And if you onboarded ThreatLocker today, we're going to do a scan of your machine and we're going to show you about 500 applications you're running. You're going to say to me, I've got about 15, and we're going to show you 500. And the Logitech Quick Cam Support app in the bottom right corner of the screen, not written by security people, is one of those apps. And your Sound Blaster, if Sound Blaster is still a thing, is one of those apps. And we're going to say, oh, by the way, this app can see all of your data, and it wasn't written. And then your security software written by security people that was compromised by Russia. We're going to show you that as well. So we're going to show you all of the apps in your system. We're going to show you everything it can access. But then we're going to say to you that all these apps don't need access to all your data. How many of those 500 apps need to see your network shares? maybe 5. So we're going to start saying, well, what shouldn't be able to see your data? We're going to start with high-risk apps. So we're going to say PowerShell in 90% of deployments or 95% of deployments doesn't need to see network shares. It doesn't need to talk to the internet except to these servers. And you might have exceptions. And it doesn't need to talk to these applications. Office doesn't need to talk to PowerShell, Run DLL, C-Script, the Microsoft Diagnostics tool, or any of those. So we're going to actually suggest ring fencing policies to say that we expect the app you run is going to be compromised. But this is what it needs to do. So if it's compromised, this is what it can do. In Zoom in 2020, there was a vulnerability in Zoom. It could call PowerShell. But just by saying, we know Zoom doesn't need to talk to PowerShell, it wasn't able to. Office in 2022, 23, Felina, I'm trying to remember the years now. It didn't need to talk to diagnostic tool. It doesn't need to talk to PowerShell. So what we do is we say we expect these tools to be compromised. Now, when they are compromised, they're going to do one or two things, because this is what most compromised do. They're going to run code in its protected memory, and it's going to access things it shouldn't, and it's going to send that out to the internet or do something bad with it. Or they're going to download another app to do that. So if we're blocking other apps, it can't download another app, but we're also going to limit what it can do. And the amount of 0 days we stopped, and I'll use the term 0 days, but even if we think about SolarWinds Orion with the backdoor built in, we're able to foil that attack just by stopping it reach out to some random server on the internet it didn't need to. And ring fencing, I think, is one of the most powerful things you can do with applications by only allowing them to do exactly what they need to do.
So Danny, the examples that we're talking about now are great from a 30,000-foot view, but I want to drive a little bit deeper, right? If we were a single-family home that only had one front door and maybe a slider in the back, this is great. But modern enterprise, we're like a high-rise in New York City. We have 72 floors, probably 100 tenants on each floor. How do you handle the persona-based type scenarios, right? Because I may have sets and groups of people who need certain access to certain applications, others who don't, certain folks who need ring fencing, certain folks who don't. It's more complicated than one front door and one slider. Like I said, enterprise is complicated, and there may be multiple personas, hundreds of personas within a large enterprise that you need to deal with.
There's not a single company in the world that's perfectly deployed in any security product, first of all, and is implementing it in the perfect way, including ThreatLocker on our own product. Like we have lots of people internally. We have developers, we have app teams, we have salespeople, we have marketing people, all on different software. But when we deploy ThreatLocker, this is what we're going to do. We can group based on your Active Directory and your SCCM or Azure or whatever groups you have. We're going to deploy ThreatLocker and we're going to tell you what's in your environment. So generally, we recommend learning by computer first, because then if there's something weak on one machine, it doesn't automatically get allowed on the entire thing. So then after a week of learning, we're going to say, look, this is all the software you run. I'll pick Adobe Reader to start with. Adobe Reader is running on 90% of your machines. So you go in and say, allow this on 100%, because it's Adobe Reader. I feel like the risk, all applications carry a risk, but the risk of allowing it everywhere outweighs the risk of me having to do that last 10 of approvals. We're going to say that advanced IP scanner is on 20 of your machines. You're going to look at those. Now, we're going to flag that as a high-risk application too. So you're going to say, 18 of those are my IT machines, and they scan the network. So we're going to promote that to the IT group, and then we're going to remove it from the other two, because they shouldn't be running it. I don't want my users running advanced IP scanner. That's a bad look in the environment. So we're going to learn, and we're going to show you what's there, and then you're going to choose. And it's not a massive undertaking. It's not nothing. I mean, we typically walk you through it. But put it this way: typically, most of our customers, we stay on the call with them. So if we were on a call too many hours, we're losing money on this. So we're sitting on the call, we're walking you through, we're saying these are the apps, these are the high risk ones. Let's figure out what you want at an organization level. Let's figure out what you want at the user level. The job being, how do we take away as much privilege as possible without annoying and making your life as an IT professional a nightmare? And so we set those policies. And then where we've got high risk policies, we figure out what we can do to mitigate those risks. So we might say, for example, I'm not comfortable the fact that I have this developer who downloads a new application every day, but they need to do it. So how can I mitigate that risk without, I can't allow the developer, I can't restrict the software the developer has, because for whatever reason, they need to download a new app every single day. It's completely different. Maybe they test software. Well, I can ring fence untrusted apps. I can't let it see my network. I can limit where I can talk to. Maybe I've got a user and it's not just applications. Of course, applications are the biggest concerns, but the philosophy of zero trust or least privilege is, how do I take away a user's access where it's not required? And how do I give them access where they are required? So my CFO requires access to all of my financial files because he's the CFO. And he also requires access to Box.net and Dropbox and Google Drive and everything else, because he uploads isolated financials to various investors who have their own policies. So how do I limit my exposure there? So then we start saying, well, we've given him access to the files because he needs it. And under even zero trust principles, he has access to what he needs. He's got access to the websites because he needs access to them. And under zero trust principles, he has access. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an alerting policy and maybe even an automatic blocking policy that says, if he uploads over 50 files in an hour, I'm going to automatically shut his access off until it's been reviewed by our SOC to those files, just in the browser. Not completely, but I'm going to limit his uploadability. So we can choose exactly what we can do based on triggers as well. So it's not always about nobody gets nothing. It's about, what do you need to do your job? And if you need to install new software every day, which is unlikely, you can install new software every day. But if
you haven't met some of my users,
and like even admin rights, it allows you to say, I'm going to take away admin rights without taking away admin rights for every application, because I understand that this application was written in 1997.
Yeah, and for the listeners out there, baselining for the CFO, it's probably a good idea to sit down and baseline with the CFO instead of for the CFO, right? And talk to them and have the conversations about, hey, what's your normal baseline of activity? And let's work around that. And hey, heads up, these are the limitations we're going to put in place. So when you get blocked, right? And just having those preemptive conversations.
Yeah, look, C-suite needs to understand why you're doing something, because anyone in a C-suite position should care enough about the risks of the business that they're going to respond. So, but I mean, they're also relatively simple. Normally, C-suite are just running the same set of apps. They're not as complicated as you think. But when I think about when I'm building out a policy set, I always start and try and deal with the biggest risk first. So stop untrusted software for 99% of the business is relatively easy to do. It's interesting, we got 54,000 companies that use ThreatLocker today. I think 53,900 of them had never considered blocking software by default before using ThreatLocker.
Yeah, because of the fear of shutting down the business.
Absolutely.
But if you use the approach you just talked about, Danny, which is, let me inventory everything, let me simulate, let me show you what the environment's doing, and give them the ability to quickly and easily create policies that make it easier, because it's always the do hard part of this, which Jason talked about earlier. But if you can make it easy, then it puts some level of control in the hands of the organization to actually do it, right? And I think that's been the biggest challenge here.
And I remember when we started, I said I want to sign up one small company and one large company. And that was my goal. If I could sign one small and one large, I could get any company in the world to use it. If I could sign that skyscraper and that one bedroom bungalow, so I'm gonna be able to do. And today, like I said, we have 54,000 companies, loads of smalls and loads of large companies. The other thing is that we realized was a problem day one was this updating of apps. And that's the thing we had to deal with in an economy of scale. And the biggest department in ThreatLocker is what we call our application team. By the way, we're also the biggest user of our own product. So, and I don't mean internally, I'll explain that in a moment. So our application team's job every day, and most of the time they get it released from the vendors beforehand, is to get updates to applications before they hit your machine. So if you have a policy for Zoom today, the policy for Zoom will work tomorrow even if it changes, because you don't have to think about what's required to run Zoom. You just say, I've got a policy, and ThreatLocker takes care of that for you. And in addition to that, we have and this is where it shows that this is a viable service. It's about $1.20 a month. So that shows you how cheap it is for the cyber hero approvals. And you can send all of your approvals to our 24-hour team, which is based here in Florida. And they will actually do the approvals based on your company's corporate policy. And we have over 1 million users on that. So over 1 million endpoints send their approvals to our team. And we make money on it. And by the way, we're also testing a lot more aggressively than you would. So every time we get an approval, we have to test it. We have to research it. We have to find we can't just say, I know Bob, he's just downloading his printer. we say, this is a really bad file and we're going to prove this. And we'll go through every test. We'll research it. And we do that for over 1 million endpoints. And when you think about if we're doing that for over 1 million endpoints, we're the biggest user of our own product, which means the process has to be seamless. Because if it's not, we're going to lose money.
Right.
Now,
It's going to put the burden on your team to do all those manually.
Yes.
right. Now, how deep into the application level do you get? So my example is, all right, you have these fat applications that you can download, but what about things like Chrome extensions? You know, when ChatGPT came out and it was first out, organizations were worried about privacy issues. And, today's day, you can download a Google extension that's ChatGPT Google extension. So
Okay.
do you get to that level as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and not only that, there's this, one of the most popular Chrome extensions we see on customers during onboard is a Chrome extension called Coopert. Anyone use it here? No, I hope not. But and one of the things we'll do, we'll tell you, hey, this user has Coopert running on their machine. It was made in China, and it can see all of the passwords for every website you go to. Now, that doesn't mean it's stealing the passwords, just to be clear. The Chinese would never do that.
It doesn't mean it isn't either.
It doesn't mean it isn't, but it allows you to make business decisions, because now you get a request, and it also allows the user, because the user can self-police in some requests. So a user goes to download Coopert tomorrow, it pops up and says, you're trying to run Coopert. This is a coupon clipper made in China that, if permitted, will be able to see all of the passwords for every website you go to. Do you want to request this from your IT team? So it allows the user to understand the context behind why you're doing this as well. Because they're not just saying, hey, and we'll actually research the permissions of every extension. Someone downloads Grammarly, we'll say, this is what Grammarly can see. Do you want to allow Grammarly? Well, now, we're not here to be judge and jury, but if we can arm you with information, it allows you to be a good judge and allows you to decide, should I allow this or shouldn't I? And is the risk worth the reward? Most companies do not block Grammarly from running. Some companies say we have a very strict approach, no Grammarly running. But it's your decision as a business. Our job is to make your decision easy and seamless.
Well, also end user as well, right? Because those two examples, Grammarly, it's going to help me with the productivity of my daily work. Coupon clipper, how do I actually go to my leader and say, I need a coupon clipper? Like, now you're going to self-police a little bit, right?
Risk versus reward. We had an 80% drop in requests. So something like 98% of blocks are never requested by users. And the day we implemented a box, and this was back in 2020, 2021, we implemented a box that said, please describe the reason you need this. It's an optional box, by the way. It used to just say request access. Optionally, you can say, now you can mandate it as an IT team if you want. Please describe why you want this software. We had such a large drop in requests, we actually thought our servers had gone down. So we genuinely thought we had some kind of outage because we were freaking out over this. Why is our approval request gone down? Because we monitor metrics in ThreatLocker so tightly. And it gives the users the information, but also it's a user now. So if you look at a company without ThreatLocker and you're at home today, or your users at home, and they need to install their printer. So they download HP LaserJet 5500, if that's even a real printer. They double click on the executable. The executable is going to be allowed to run because you don't have any blocking software. But it's probably going to ask for their admin credentials because you need to be an admin to install a printer. So they're going to call the IT team and they're going to say, I'm trying to install my printer. The IT team is going to have to log onto their machine, put his or her credentials into the pop-up box, which may have a key log on or may not. And then the user is going to get their printer. If you take that same flow with ThreatLocker, they double click on the executable, it gets blocked. They hit request access, and the IT team gets a notification in the help desk, and it's going to say, Bob's trying to install this printer. It's an HP LaserJet 5500, and it requires admin rights to install as well. So it's blocked from an application control point of view, and it's blocked, and it's also, they're not an admin. So the IT guy can now say, okay, Bob's allowed to install this printer, and during the installation process for the next 8 hours, he can also run it as an admin. The IT guy hits proof. Do it right from their phone. If you're not a massive company and you've got a push notification on your phone, Bob gets a message 60 seconds later saying you can now install your printer. He hits run, runs as an admin, never asks another question. So it's not about, you actually sped the user's experience up so much in that case. You've increased security and streamlined the process.
So you have a consumer version of this I can deploy to my in-laws and manage that stuff and not have to get called
So
out.
to answer your question, we don't have a consumer version, but the number one thing in my kid's search history when I looked at it back in the day was how do I disable ThreatLocker on my laptop?
Oh my god, that's funny.
And I said, if you can do that, I'm going to give you a job. Good luck.
My daughter's, by the way, was to figure out how to pop my Wi-Fi so she could get around my restrictions, which she figured out.
By the way, change it so my kids figured out if you change the MAC address of your computer, you can bypass the blocking. So I changed my Wi-Fi so you had to explicitly be on the allow list for MAC address.
Yeah.
Doesn't work for them anymore.
So what are the biggest challenges you see ahead of us? I mean, we just talked about different extensions that are out there. We talked about all the different apps, but technology is changing so rapidly. Things are moving so fast. What are you seeing ahead that's going to be the biggest challenge for ThreatLocker to tackle?
Look, so I think if you're using ThreatLocker properly, so if you've deployed, you're allowing trusted software, because we've also got network controls. We have this thing called dynamic ACLs, which will actually on your LAN say block RDP to my file server, except from the IT guy's laptop, and it'll close the port and it'll keep a track of your IP address on your DHCP scope. I mean, it'll just basically when you try and connect to RDP, it connects back, validates you are who you say you are, and then says the port's open. Same for file servers. You can say shut down SMB. Someone comes in with a foreign laptop onto your network, even from the same DHCP port, the port's closed, but it will connect back and authenticate. So we do a bunch of stuff like that. So when you're connected and you've configured ThreatLocker properly in the endpoint, your web filtering's configured, your approval requests, your elevation control, your applications are blocked, you've got the EDR, you've got the automatic. It's really hard to get onto an endpoint. So I think where we are focusing most of our new efforts right now in ThreatLocker is the cloud. It's what about your Office 365 tenant? So we have this product in beta right now that blocks IP. You configure your Office 365 tenant so only trusted IP addresses can get into it, but it automatically tracks your phones and your computers and then adds your IP addresses as you move around the world. So if someone steals a token, they can't get in. We've done a lot of detection and response in Office 365, which is always too little and too late when you're doing detection and response. But I think where we're focusing on is hardening the world. So how can we stop someone stealing a token and copying it to another machine? How can we stop someone getting into your GitHub account while allowing your admins to go home and plug in their laptop and connect to GitHub? How do we stop someone logging AWS ACLs? And I think that's, for our customers, the biggest challenge right now isn't the endpoint, because we've done such a good job at locking up the endpoint and servers, because it's not just endpoints, it's servers, but how do we enhance the cloud experience, and how do we streamline it without stopping them do things they need to do? You can't restrict Office 365 to my work IP address. I need to work from home. How do I get in the car? How do we update those ACLs in real time? And I think that's where we're focusing most of our efforts now, is the cloud. And the same principles in the cloud that we focus on the endpoints.
Yeah. And that's been a challenge for a while, and one that I think can be solved with the right approaches. And it sounds like some of the foundational elements of what you've built in ThreatLocker could be applied to some of those cloud-based and in almost the application infrastructure, right? Containers, containerization, and all the other things, right? You can almost think of a container now as an endpoint.
Applications, containers, all of which apply. Just IP address connecting to your email account. Where's it from? Can we trust the resource? Is it in a likely location? How do I stop my CEO getting blocked every time he travels from country to country because Microsoft triggered an impossible travel? Well, I've got his phone. I know his IP address. I know where he is. I can better automate responses without interfering with the user. So security shouldn't be about stopping the user, but it should be about securing the environment and streamlining the processes for the user. And I think for most of our customers, if you think we've had airports and airlines, very, very big, some of the biggest airports in the world have moved to ThreatLocker because they were fed up with their EDR automating responses. So they went away from an automated response to this is our environment, we're in control.
Danny, great segment. Thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, everyone.
If you want to learn how default by deny can help your security posture, please visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker. Not all vulnerabilities are the same. A critical vulnerability on a marketing laptop isn't the same risk as a critical vulnerability on a production server accessed by a domain admin missing EDR. Sevco Security shows you these interconnected risks. Sevco centralizes intelligence on all your devices, identities, software, vulnerabilities, and security controls, enriching them with threat intelligence and business context in real time, so your security team has exactly what it needs to effectively prioritize and remediate vulnerabilities based on the unique requirements of your business. Think of it as a to-do list for risks, but less annoying. Find a smarter way to manage exposures. Visit securityweekly.com/Sevco today. All right, gentlemen, let's dig into this week's articles. And I put some good ones in here for you, Jason.
Yep.
Of course, I did, to get us started. So this first article is Bridging the Gap Between the CISO and the Board of Directors. Now, we covered the Splunk research that is the basis for this article. But this is Michael Fanning, the CISO at Splunk, talking about the approach to go here. And I think you'll partially agree with the approach.
Yeah, I mean, right out of the gate, I think opening sentence or maybe 2 or 3 in, guess what, guys? More FaceTime doesn't mean better communication or stronger alignment with the board. Who would have thought? Content matters, right? The message you're delivering matters. The relationship that you have matters. What did surprise me in here, again, just seeing it again, surprises me that every time we talk about this, 44% of CISOs, only 44% of CISOs think they're adequately communicating their milestones, their progress with the board. 29% of board members believe that the CISOs are actually adequately communicating to them. Seeing these stats over and over again, it just blows my mind.
Which means there's misalignment.
100%. 100%. And at the end of it, even the CISOs aren't confident, right? Because if it's only 44%,
I'm not surprised, though.
They're not confident.
I would always expect there to be some difference in that stat between whoever's getting the data and whoever's delivering the data, right? Like that's just the nature of the beast. It's not the margin isn't that high, but it's concerning that the overall margins are low.
Yeah, only 44% of CISOs are confident that they're delivering the message correctly.
But that's part of the challenge, right? I think we're still struggling with security is a very technical control, right? It just is. It's probably one of the most. Like you could think about developing product and, writing code. That's somewhat easy to explain in the sense that like you're either getting product out on time or you're not, right? The IT side, like it's down to business metrics about what you're delivering. But security is it's just very technical. So the translation of that into business objectives and business communication in a way of talking about it in the right way, I think that's why we struggle so much. I still am not convinced that we've got a great way to communicate it. Hence, 56% of people don't think they have it down.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the maturity side of where we've been fighting here on this podcast, at least for the 6 years that I've been around, is to bring that maturity to the table. And one of the things I always harken back to is, let's go back 25 years. CIOs were in the same debacle. How do I translate the technical and earn this seat at the table? They were fighting for the seat at the table, right? Mm-hmm. Now they've gotten it because every business is dependent on technology now. But go back 25 years, it was the same fight. It was the same struggle. It was the same, issues with communication barriers and being able to articulate to, the value prop of IT to the C-suite and the board.
So this is where I would take this article a little bit. And this is where it's not about how you communicate, it's what you communicate, right? So when I look at this list, right, I agree with the first one, right? We talk about this, build relationships with other leaders in the business, understand the business, absolutely 100%. Number 2, improve your communication skills, not only just how you communicate, but what you communicate. And this is the biggest gap, I think, is are we communicating the right things to the board in the right way for them to understand it? So to your point, Ben, it is very technical, but how do I take that technical language away, simplify it to the way the board understands it so that I'm not only better communicating, but I'm communicating the right things, right? And that's where I could take 2 and break it into at least 2 parts, if not more, around not only how to communicate, but what to communicate. And then you get down to number 3, and I'm like, make sure everyone's on the same page about compliance. How about we all make sure everybody's on the same page about risk?
Thank you. Yeah. That's exactly what I put underneath this, right? I couldn't, the second I read that piece, I thought of whatever that game show is that you have the big X that just goes, meh, like that. That's what I thought of right away. The big X, no thanks. Right. Same thing. Make sure everyone is on the same page about business risk management.
Yes.
That was my note for this, right? And these, these the 3 things here, 2 of them are close to dead on, but it's more than building relationships with other leaders. It's learning about their area of the business. You have to learn. Just don't build. Listen, I can go to the bar with another C-level all day long and we can go bullshit about stuff. I need to learn their area of the business.
Well, so a lot of these articles, when we review them, right? Like it's the Wendy's lady. Where's the beef? Like you read the article and you're like, okay, I want to hear about this. And then you read the article, you're like, there's no detail here. There's no substance. There's no meat. Like I want to know how you're, I think to your point, Matt, how you're doing it, right? Like
and what's going to work, what's going to resonate. And again, compliance is, I had this conversation earlier today with my CEO. If you don't have to do it, you're not going to do it. If you're required to do it, you're going to do it, right? And that's the compliance mentality a little bit to me. Like if it's regulated to do it, then I'm going to do it. No. We almost want to, we don't want to go that route, right? Like let's understand the risk to the business. Some things we should do, some things we shouldn't do. And that's okay. But it's making sure we're all on the same page with what those risks are and not just using.
At the end of the day, though, guys, at the end of the day, every single business in this country it has to adhere to at least state level privacy laws.
Right.
So guess what? You're still going to think about that no matter what. So get compliance out of there because it's not whatever your regulatory issue is. You have to deal with risk. And guess what? Privacy law, that's risk. So start thinking about the risk to the business.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's where I want to see these articles go.
I think what you're saying, Jason, is like compliance just a given. And I hear a lot of organizations kind of talking about compliance like it's up for debate. And at the end of the day, like, why does that, we either are compliant or we're not. And that should be the stat that gets in front of the board and the rest of the C-level, right? Like the discussion about like, well, do we have to do it? And like, what should we do? And what's compliance? Just leave that to the technical control at the C-level and lower of the CISO, right? Like the CISO should manage that. You should be trusting him. If you're hiring a CISO, like, why don't you let him do it? And then worry about the hard stuff. That's to say easy. The hard stuff is the rest of it.
Exactly. The compliance should be a byproduct of a really good cybersecurity and risk management program. That's the byproduct is your compliant.
Right. So that leads into article number 2, the value of a chief information security officer in the corporate world, or at least the proposed value, because as I read this list, I wish all CISOs were in this position.
I know. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's not the reality of what every CISO role is empowered to be able to do at the end of the day. Right. In many instances, CISOs are still looked at as the technical person, right? Strictly technical and not aligned to the business. So
if you look at this list, there's very few, I would say, that are table stakes, right? Like they all should be, but they're very few. So just start at the top of the list, strategic cybersecurity leadership. I know of a lot of CISOs that have that title, but they're not the strategic cyber leader, right? Like there's somebody else like pulling the strings on it. Risk mitigation. Nope, not there, right? Like I have to get down to number 5, incident response and crisis management. And I'd throw crisis management out and I'd have to put a security in front of incident response. And that's the first one where I get to and I say, most CISOs probably are responsible when the shit hits the fan, that they're actually the guy somebody's going to call, right? And then I get to security culture. No, there's just very few out of a list of 8. Driving trust. No, most CISOs, I would say, aren't actually involved on the front side of the business, and they don't see it as a value. So 1 or 2 of these are maybe there, why aren't we talking? Why aren't the rest?
I mean,
Right.
in all
From the
honesty,
conversation.
the header to that list should read, here's a closer look at the value that a CISO should bring to an organization or to the corporate world, right?
Exactly.
Should.
Yes. This is a list of all the things they could or should do,
Exactly.
but currently are not because they're
That's
not
right.
in a position to do that. That's why I pulled this article in, because it was
And if you're a CEO, look at this list. And if your CISO isn't doing some of these things for you, you need to be asking yourself why
Yep.
you aren't doing that, because you're missing out on a ton of value for what you're paying for that CISO.
Absolutely.
agreed. The threat landscape is constantly evolving, making it nearly impossible for security teams to keep up. That's why so many top companies turn to Tines, a security orchestration and automation platform built by security practitioners for security practitioners. Tines empowers analysts and engineers to automate their most repetitive, time-consuming tasks. No coding expertise required, just the flexibility to tailor workflows to your team's exact needs. Ready to break free from the limitations of traditional tools? Learn more at securityweekly.com/Tines. Next, the CISO Mind Map 2025 updated version. Pulled that in. We covered this last year when they updated it. Or was it last year or the year before? I can't remember. I went to the focus areas. So it was pretty interesting, right? Like I've seen the mind map. This has been going on for a while. And I'm like, I could care less about some of the changes. Like where are these focus areas going? And so I went through the focus areas just quickly. I'm like, it's time to secure generative AI. It's time to secure AI in general, not just generative AI. Yeah, I hear you, but AI is more than just Gen AI, folks. So you probably got to look at it holistically. Consolidate and rationalize security tools. We've been going through that for 2+ years now.
At least.
Yeah, at least. Identify and manage security debt. Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Ransomware, cyber resilience. Create
Yep, love that
meaningful
one.
metrics. There's a big one. That's a whole
There you
say
go.
easy, do hard segment on its own.
Right. Yep.
Yep. And then improve cyber hedging.
Right.
But what have we been doing the last 25, 30 years if we're not improving cyber hygiene?
Right.
Anyways.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, I love the CISO mind map when it comes out. I love digging into all the nuance to it. But just like you, I go down to those recommendations that they put in there, right? Because generally you're going to know, yeah, they make some changes to the mind map itself, and seeing the nuance after the fact is pretty cool. And, you know, having that Nirvana scenario of what every CISO should have within their domain is great. But yeah, these recommendations, I just kind of scroll down to those and see what's on the docket for the 25-26 year at this point.
Yep. That leads into our next article, CISO's battle security platform fatigue, which is part of this whole security tooling consolidation, right? That we've been in for, I would say, a good 2 years. Like we've been in the solid conversation around platform consolidation for a couple of years now. Shows up on the CISO map. Here's another article talking about it. How close are we?
I mean, Matt, you know that I've been an ecosystem fanboy for years, right? And for me, it was always it was weighing the difference between having all of the magic quadrant tools in my environment that aren't interconnected, I can't get context out of, it's a pain in the ass to integrate them together, or having an ecosystem that I can better adopt, train my staff, be able to get interdependencies and interconnections between all of them, and having that ecosystem approach. And for me, that added more value to the business. Plus, on top of it, sometimes you saved money. In all honesty, you save some money, right? Yeah. So for me, having the ecosystem approach where I have tools that are all talking together, it's easier for my folks to adopt and easier to train on and save a little bit of money in the long run, far outweighed having all these magic quadrant tools in my environment that we adopt 10% of and they don't talk to each other.
Yeah. I mean, I hear it from our customers. They're like, look, I have to do more with the tools that I have. I can't get more tools. So I need to start looking for where do I get economies of scale? How do I do more with what I have? How do I deploy more capabilities? Like that's a huge part of my existing product roadmap is around this concept of platform consolidation.
I mean, it has to be. It just makes sense. You know, Harking back to the IT departments, the things that IT departments struggled with for decades was adoption of tool sets. Well, guess what? The security team suffers from the same thing. Adoption of tool sets. Build an ecosystem where the training's similar across the board. It's one platform that they can work in. Consolidate it as much as you possibly can. And not to mention, you're probably paying for a lot of the licenses anyway if you're in the Microsoft ecosphere. I mean, if you have an E3 or an E5, you're paying for a lot of that licensing as it is. Take advantage of it. Start using it.
Yeah, you have to bring value.
100%.
Yeah, it's back to the value conversation. It is. We can't just buy unlimited tools for the sake of buying unlimited tools if we're not providing value. Yeah. And if you're completely frustrated, then here's some practical advice for your next CISO job interview.
I love it. Hey, you want to know what? Right out of the gate, though, they started talking about things we've been talking about for a long time. Be creative in your exploration because it may not be the CISO title anymore.
Nope.
Right out of the gate, number one, that's exactly what they pointed out. It may not be that CISO title. It may be something else.
Yep. And I think understand market reality. Budgets are tight, right? Compensation is not where it was a few years ago. Ben, I know you've gone through this recently. Like the market has evolved. It's changed. It's not as easy to find these roles anymore than it used to be.
No, it's definitely, I mean, if you stay in touch with any of the recruiters, I mean, there's a number of them out there, right? Michael Vicente, you look at the, Hitch Partners, you look at what comes out in the surveys, the data is there, right? I mean, I think that there are still good paying CISO jobs like that. Again, that data is shown in in everything they collect. But I think that there are a lot of companies that are trying to reevaluate that and figure out where they're actually wanting to play and what they want out of a CISO. And a lot of them still don't know, right? So yeah, it's kind of all over the board, but it's a rough market.
It is. And one of the things that was interesting, there's a link to navigating the job search coach guide for CISOs. I don't know if anybody clicked on the link, but Yaz Partners, who did this article, also gave a link to that. And it's interesting. It kind of helps you kind of like figure out, like based on the job, the role, et cetera. It kind of guides you a little bit on the job search. I thought it was an interesting little tool that some could use to help them kind of navigate the current market landscape.
And I mean, let's not forget, I mean, the salary compensation may not be where you're looking for, but look at the total package. It's important to do that. You know, if you're looking at the total comp package, there may be some incentives built in there. Hey, culture means a lot too. Listen,
I was going to say culture and quality of life.
Culture is huge. Culture is huge. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to work for an organization that's going to support you, that's going to back you, that's going to invest in you. And there may be perks there. If that, just because that bottom line salary isn't what you want it to be, doesn't necessarily mean that the total compensation package is a bad thing. Look at the total comp package.
Yeah, I know somebody who was a CISO, pretty well respected, and he kind of stepped down to a role reporting to a CISO. And one of his comments was, I value not having to go into the C-level meeting and have that argument and like trying to fight for budget and like, it's just know what you want, know what you're trying to get out of it. And, maybe you take a different tact.
At some point, I don't want to work that hard.
Right. Yeah. I mean, one of the other things I pointed out here too is, leverage your network. I firmly believe that the network it holds the strongest opportunities. I firmly believe that. That is always your cornucopia of opportunity if you start using your network. And it can get you the connections quick.
Yeah. And that's typically how I either find a job or jobs find me, right? It's through the network. You've got to keep that network fresh. And, I was talking to some recruiters the other day. I have some people look in and we're just getting a deep update on the market. Like all the things we talk about are real because the recruiters see it on the other side. Like a lot of those recruiting opportunities have dried up. It is way tougher today to find some of these jobs, but it is through these network connections that are going to help you if you are looking for sure.
Yeah, and the other little golden nugget that I pulled out of here too, the title was aligned with what they say they're looking for, but I dig a little bit deeper and I look at it and I say, listen, don't walk in the door to a company and say, here's everything you're doing wrong and here's how I'm going to uproot everything and fix it. Yep. Right? That's not how you lose the ego, right? Lose the ego. You have to walk in the door and talk about how you're going to complement the company. Yeah, maybe they do need help. Maybe they do need to mature. But guess what? No matter what you do, that's going to be a journey, and that's going to take time and influence and relationships. Don't walk in the door saying, I'm going to disrupt this entire company and turn it on its side. Not a good look.
Well, the first thing you should do going in is try to understand the company, try to understand the business, right?
Exactly.
I mean, even if you're in the same industry, businesses are different, and how they run their business is going to be different.
Right.
That's if you want to engender yourself as a good CISO within the organization, learn.
That's right. That's your job.
Listen a lot more than you talk.
Yeah, don't call your future employers baby ugly. Might not get you the job.
That's right.
Just next article, cybersecurity pros are feeling pressure from return to office and budget cuts. Yes, we are. A lot
I'll
of people
tell you right
are.
now, that's not the only place that they're feeling pressure. That's that's the cherry on top of the pressure at the end of the day, right? Because there's so many bigger places that, CISOs and cybersecurity professionals are getting burnt out on. Now you're taking away their ability to be flexible with their work-life balance, right? So now that's just an added stressor. I look at it, right? And at the end of it, if you're going to be an organization that's going to force people to start coming in to work every day that have been used to a certain way, you're just adding on to that risk of burning them out. Right? And for me, we got to have balance. We got to still live in that remote hybrid workplace. We have to. We just have to.
Yep.
Yeah. Agreed.
I've been remote since 2009. People are like, really? I'm like, yep. Why? Because I decided I wasn't going to move. And if you wanted to hire me,
that's right.
I was going to stay where I was. And
Here I am.
Take me or leave me.
That's right.
Anyways, this last article is, when I read this one, I was like, oh my gosh, we have to cover this.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
And I'll tell you, I have so many examples, but how to prevent strategy fatigue, right? It's because your CEO comes back with the shiny ball syndrome. Look, we should go do this. And
that's right. And it's dead on. It's absolutely dead on. It kicks into the article saying, here's what typically happens when a CEO returns from a conference, right? And it's, hey, shiny ball. Hey, shiny new idea. Hey, shiny new strategy. Let's do this. Let's put all of our efforts into it. And then all of a sudden, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks later, it just completely burns out and dies on the vine.
Yep.
Typical. I'm like, every CEO I've ever worked for operates this way.
Yeah.
Every single one.
Yeah. And when you think about it, right? You put all this effort towards it, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it is. Think about how much time you're wasting on that versus executing on what you'd already decided on.
Absolutely.
And what drives me nuts is if you set a strategic direction, then stick to it. The one that's not on this list, it's kind of like after 4. Maintain a single visible pipeline. No. It's like number 5. Like, execute against your strategy. Stop changing it.
That's right.
That's how you kill an organization.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of it, there's a level of governance that needs to take place, right? And I pride myself, and I'll speak for the CEO of my company, of we're a yin and a yang, and we operate really well together. He's the visionary. He's the evangelist. He's out there looking at the 5 years down the line. But what we know is I'm the execution guy. I'm the person who's going to take that vision, ensure, number one, that it's going to meet the needs of the organization. We're going to be successful as possible trying to implement this. It's not going to disrupt our business, and we're going to follow it through and execute on it, right?
Yes.
I think it's extremely important for CEOs to be able to have someone like that second in command, where they can say, here's where I want to go. This is the vision I have. I'm going to go evangelize this to the world. Let's figure out how to execute it. And boom, take the flag and run.
Yeah. And it is it's a hard balance sometimes.
It is.
Because they want to let's go do this. Let's go do. No. I only have so many resources, so much capacity to execute. I have to stay focused. Otherwise, you turn your teams into these whiplash areas. Oh my God, you're wasting so much energy and time when you could just stay on course. Now, that doesn't mean your strategy doesn't shift and morph over time, because it will, and it does.
Yep.
But the constant back and forth is what's going to kill an organization faster.
100%. 100%. And that second in command needs to be able to have, number one, the confidence, and secondarily, the ability to influence that type of mediation, I'll call it.
Yeah.
Because it's okay for a second into command to walk into a CEO and say, I totally understand that this is the new shiny thing, but we just spent 6 months implementing a strategy that's actually been moving us forward, that's been showing it's moving the needle for our organization. What this means is it's going to disrupt that. Is that what you want to do? Do you want to disrupt that? And asking the hard question. That's the beauty of the yin and the yang. You have to be comfortable asking the hard questions. He'll do the same to me. I'm going to do the same to him. You hired me for a reason.
Right.
Challenge the process. And we always have to be challenging each other. And if at the end of the day, we come to a decision and say, we'll be able to move the needle farther and faster and get better production or better revenue or whatever the case may be, sure, we'll make the decision. But you got to challenge the process every time these shiny things come in front of you. You have to.
Yeah, you do. Otherwise, your life becomes miserable.
That's right. You can't operate a business on a roller coaster. You can't. And it can't be up and down and up and down and up and down. You can't. You just can't do it.
Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.